Welcome back to the Circuit Revival, where today we have another Nintendo Switch Lite here. Now this one's pretty good because it came in the box with what looks to be pretty much all of the sort of accessories and everything. So I've got the instructions and see how we get this out. That just slots out there. And there's that. So it didn't come with a charger, but overall this thing clearly has been well looked after. So we'll just get all that stuff out of the way and let's take a look at the console itself then. So screen's in good condition, front's in good condition as well as the pads there. Screws don't look like they've been taken out. There's a few marks and stuff on the back. The port looks like it's seen better days, but we've got no memory card and no game card in here, but we'll take a look at the port because it's hard to see there, but we'll get the scope round. But the port's definitely seen better days. I'm still impressed with sort of what people manage to do to these Nintendo Switches, because there's so many that are damaged. Okay, so here we are under the scope, and you can now see sort of the damage that's occurred here. It looks a bit worse in person than it does under the scope. You can clearly see there is one pin all the way down here laying up against the end. Top end looks alright, but there's a few others that are starting to kind of get knocked out just down here. So this port's going to need to come off, and is clearly sort of like the origin of this problem. So we'll get this apart. We're not going to plug it into the ammeter to begin with because clearly the port is knackered and I don't want to cause any more damage. But normally with something like this, the port was alright, we'd plug it into our ammeter, which is showing just here. And what this would do was tell us sort of a bit more information around what's going on with the device really. So let's start by getting this open. So I'll fast forward through this so you guys don't have to sort of like sit through it. But then once we're out, I'll jump back in. Okay, so I thought I'd just jump back in here. So I've got the back off and this thing looks pretty pristine. So it's clearly been well looked after. It's really clean inside. Usually when you get to this point, there's sort of just dust everywhere. Now, I don't think anyone's been in this before and this does look really clean, but we'll keep going. Okay, here we go. Board is out of the chassis. So normally the first thing I do is take the port off just to make sure it's not causing any other issues. But what we'll start off with is we'll just start by checking for any shorts around M92. So M92 is sort of a common failure point on these boards, and it's just this chip right here. So we'll check a few things. Let's see if this will get us close enough. Cool, what we'll do then is let's pull the scope round and it'll be a bit clearer. Okay, here we are under the scope, and you can say we're just looking at the port to begin with, and this runs initially through a fuse. So what we're hoping to hear here is a beep, which we have got. Now, it's a common joke with these things that these fuses are sort of indestructible and they sort of never go. In reality, the real fuse is this, the M92T36 chip. So what we'll do here is we'll have one probe on ground, and we're just going to look on either side of these capacitors. We're hoping to see a beep and a reading on one side, but not on the other. So we'll start here. So that's good, beep only on one side, and we'll keep working our way around. Okay, so we do have one cap here that is beeping on both sides. So if we go on one side of this cap, we get a beep, and if we go on the other side, we also get a beep. So there's a strong chance that this will need M92 replacing as well. So just out of a precaution, I'm going to do that anyway. So what we'll do to begin with is we'll just pull the port off, and then we will double check this just in case it's actually an issue with the port that's causing that. So I'll probably end up pulling off M92 just as a precaution, but what I'll do to start off with is I'm just going to take the port off, because we do know that we had that pin that was pushed down and touching incorrectly. So there's a chance that that might be what's causing the sort of like the short, and it's not actually the chip itself. But what we'll do is we'll get this in a board holder, and then we'll start just by getting the port off the board. And the way we're going to do this is I've got the board just hanging over the edge of my desk here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hot air from underneath, and I'm just going to blow hot air up into it from underneath. That will stop kind of melting anything and allow me just to lift the port straight off. So I've taken the end of my hot air station off, so I've got a slightly wider surface area, and you'll see I'll just wave this underneath until it gets hot enough. I'll just come into my tweezers and I'll just lift the port straight off. So let's set the hot air. Okay, so that is the port removed there. Let's just double check our M92 and see whether our short is still there. Now the board's still a bit warm, so we might get a false reading, but it might sort of be straightforward and clear enough. So I'll put one probe on ground again, and then let's go either side of this capacitor. So you can see that that short has now gone, but it is, and it's climbing. So that makes me think that the short that we were seeing on this was actually just a result of the port itself. So we might get away with only having to do the port swap on this. Excellent. Okay, so we'll get a new port prepared and ready. Okay, so it seems like so many of these things go wrong these days. I'm actually sort of running out of ports, so I need to get some new ones in. But what we'll do to start off with is we're just going to prep the port, and to do that we're going to add some solder to the pins, and what that will mean is when we come to add it to the board, it should sort of connect a bit better. So we'll start just by adding some flux. And then I'll get some solder on my iron, and then what we're going to do is I'm just going to run it across the port. There we go, that's nicely done. So now there is a solder on the port itself ready to be attached. So now with our port prepared, we just need to get the board prepared. So to do this, I'm just going to add some leaded solder to the board. What this will do will mean that the sort of melting temperature of the solder will be a bit lower, which hopefully means that we should be able to get the port on a bit easier. So I'm just going to add leaded solder to all of the ports on the board. There we go, so that is the board already. I'm just going to clean up that port slightly, and then we'll apply some sort of fresh flux afterwards. Okay, so we'll just apply some fresh flux. I'm just going to spread that around a little bit just because I don't want tons on there. Excellent, I'll get my port ready to get, and we'll basically do exactly the same thing but in reverse now. So I'm going to heat it up. Once it's hot enough, I'm going to take my port, I'm just going to drop it in. I'll hold it on for a little bit just to give it some time to adhere, and then we'll remove the heat so that it solidifies. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to try and clean this up a bit, because it's always a lot easier to clean up flux when it's hot, because otherwise it goes kind of tacky and hard to get off the board. I'm just using a cotton swab and a bit of IPA. just to get in here and clean up this flux. Okay, let's take a look at those solder points. They all look pretty good to me, but what we can do is just double check by just giving them a little nudge each to make sure that they don't move. Okay, they all look good. And then we can just take a look at the underside here. That looks all pretty solid too. So what we'll do, we'll just get the scope out of the way. Okay, and here we are back with the board. So port swap is done. So let's just double check M92 again, just to make sure now that after that new port is on, that short hasn't come back. And no, that short has not come back. Excellent, so what we can do then is we can plug this in and see whether we get a normal sort of boot from it. So if we look up at the ammeter just in the top right hand corner of the screen, what we're hoping to see is 15 volts and then the amperage go up and then come back down and then it start flashing. So let's try this in 3, 2, 1. Okay, 15 volts and it's stuck at 0.28. I've seen this before, but then sometimes when I've then come in and turned this around, it's then worked. So we'll try the other side. And that's doing the same thing. So I think what we do then is I think we need to try plug this in and see what it does, because it might be that we need to look at something else. But the fact we're getting 15 volts, I think, is evident that M92 is alright. What I think I can do actually before I get this in the chassis is I think I actually have got here a test battery, so I can plug that in and then plug in and see if we get anything different. So this is with just a full battery plugged in. Okay, that is charging. And then let's try flip the board over. And that is also charging. That looks like that went into fast charge as well. So let's get this unplugged. I'll get the test battery unplugged. And let's get this back in the chassis and see what it does. Okay, so I think we should be together enough now to test this out. So let's try this with the screen attached, and hopefully we get a battery charge symbol in this top left hand corner here. Okay, that's showing nothing. Okay, we have our charge symbol. Let's see if I can get this in a way that you can see that. So it's just there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave this to charge up a bit and then it should boot. So I'll jump back in once that's done that, but so far this is looking good. Actually, I think what I'm going to do then, now that we know that this is charging, is I'm going to get this unplugged and let me get this back together and then we'll test it all properly. Okay, we're all back together again. Let's just charge this up then. So hopefully we should still have the charging symbol on the screen. Oh no. Okay, so we're getting nothing now, and this is why they advise you never to close everything up before you start. Okay, so we are getting it there. Just try and work out why the software is not showing. Okay, there we go. So the software is showing correctly again. Let's just double check, because it did work both sides last time, but it doesn't seem to want to show it this time. Okay, it is working both ways. So let's leave this to charge up for a bit then, and then let's test this through properly. Okay, so this looks like it's just turned on. All the buttons work here. Let's test the control of everything. So we go system settings. Test input devices. And then we'll go okay, so we do have an issue with the right joystick here, which, if I'm being honest, I think is because I forgot to plug it in. I remember looking at it and feel like I forgot to do that. So let's just test the touchscreen. Touchscreen works okay. This does have parental controls on it, which we can get rid of. I'll do that sort of in a second, but for now let me get this apart again and just make sure I plug in that controller, because I remember looking at it and I definitely think I've forgotten to do so. And here we go. Here is the problem. So you can see, for one, the latch is up, and then if I just get this correctly, it's just not plugged in. So we'll just get that plugged back in. Okay, that's now plugged back in with the latch down. Let's get this back together. Okay, here we are together again. Let's just make sure that this controller is now working. Okay, there's the boot. And then we'll go back to, so test input buttons, test controller buttons. And there's our right button there if we end this. And then if we go to calibrate control sticks, that one's all good. And the left one, that's all good too. So that is there. Another fix. I'll test all the other functionality off camera. If it doesn't work, I'll jump back in. If it does work, we're all good. Either way, we fixed the issue here, so we get to add another one to this. But if you're seeing this part here, then we know for well that all is working, and I'll see you in the next one.